Hello, welcome to this video about animation rigging. In this project, I try to create a couple of more complex use cases of animation rigging that you can basically use after you've gone through the samples to learn. The first one is this one, layered animations. In this example, what I do is I basically have different constraints and then I kind of like layer them. So I turn them on and off, and I turn them on top of existing animation. So I want to show the idea of having constraints that are not permanent, that are permanent in some way. They are not just inside one clip. Let me show you what I mean. So if I press play, I have this situation. I have this character, the Viking from the tower defense project. He's looking at an archer running back and forth. And when I say he's looking, it means that the head is constrained to look at the head of the archer. And this is done through animation rigging. And that's regular usage, so I have this constraint that's on at any time. If I show you the structure of the character, you will notice the familiar rig object that contains all the constraints. As you can see, there's the head multi-aim constraint, which is currently pointing at the archer head. And this is on, so that's why the Viking is looking at the archer. If I select the Viking and I go to the animator panel, you'll also notice that he's playing an idle clip currently, and that's fine, which means that now the head is constrained on top of the idle clip, which is regular behavior. I can play the attack clip just by using this trigger, and it gives like this punch, and the head, as you can see, still follows. That's expected. So what I wanted to create was the idea of turning on and off other constraints. Specifically, I have two constraints that I will turn on and off. One is the IK on this arm, and he's gonna put the arm on top of this piece of wood. And the other one is related to the sword that he has on his back. So the sword is currently parented to the back, but I want to parent it to the hand. To do that, I set up 4 animation clips, 2 for the IK and 2 for the sword. And I can basically trigger them by using these animation triggers. So let me show you the result. If I trigger the IK on, he does that. He puts the hand on the piece of wood, and from now on, the hand is constrained to the wood. So you see that I'm back into the idle clip, but the constraint is on. If I turn it off, you see this clip gets played, and then I'm back on idle, on, and off. And so the cool thing is that I can activate the IK, and then I can, play any other animation clip like the attack one, and you see the hand is now constrained to the piece of wood. I can turn it off and play the attack one, and the hand does something different because the IK is no longer active. So how do I do this? Let me show you one thing. The key to this example is here, is on the motion. The property write defaults, which normally is on by default, so it's checked by default, I turned it off. And what does this do? Basically, by having it on, it means that when the animator enters this state, it will take any of the properties known to this animator, and it will write the defaults to the scene. So it means that if the, for example, the IK, right? The IK that I have here, which is here, left arm IK, which is originally 0. If I get into this state, and this state sets it to 1, and then I go into this state, and this state doesn't touch it, if write defaults is on, it means that it will be written to 0 again, which is not what I want. I want to leave it on 1. So that's why I basically selected all of these animation states, and as you can see, they're all off on write defaults, which means that none of them is going to write the defaults to the scene. None of them is going to reset the properties that they don't know about to their defaults, which means that when I, from idle, I click activate hand IK, and I jump into this animation state. If I go to the animation panel, you will see left hand IK. So this animation state changes the value of the IK, and it's here. It's keyframed here. So I move here, and you see the hand is like animated up and it gets connected to the piece of wood, and that's when the IK has become 1. That's the value that this animation state writes. So that's what this state does. And this is fine. Then I go here, and because this one doesn't have write defaults to true, it won't write them back. So it will just keep any value that this state has changed. Because where you're idle, I'll show you the animation clip, doesn't have any animation on the IK. So it doesn't touch it, it doesn't know about it. And because because write defaults is not on, it's not gonna touch it. It's not gonna write the defaults of the original value, which is, as I said before, is 0. So it's not gonna write it back, which means that if I press play, the value is 0 originally, right? I'm playing idle. Then I go into left-hand IK with this one. Value becomes 1. And then I go back to idle, and value stays on 1. And that's what enables me to layer all of these animations on top of each other. Like I can get the sword, and as you can see, this other constraint, the multi-parent constraint, is now parenting the sword to the hand, 1, not to the back, 0. And if I go to put back sword, these values change again. And then I go back to idle, and the value stays on the same value where I left it. And that's basically the gist of this example, is the ability to have some constraints that are animated in some of the states, but are not written back by other states, which means that now you can combine them in any way you want. So I can take the sword, you see the sword is parented to the hand thanks to this constraint, and now I can play the attack animation as much as I want, as I deactivate the IK, and everything happens independently from each other. So this is a very powerful possibility that you have with this system.